Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne Hanson, and I am honored to represent elementary education with you today. In elementary education, we have a lot of obstacles that are not always understood, and we take it all on every day. So we are amazing. We all feel similarly about these items that we will be discussing today. So even if it is from my standpoint, a lot of us have very similar kinds of activities we've done, very similar philosophies on things. And so when we discuss things today and I mention things that I have done, they match many ideas of what others have done in administration, and particularly things that we have discussed in elementary education. We're glad to represent you. So when you do reach out to me, I am happy to also forward your information to our group and we can share other resources with you. Building a school culture within distance learning that values diversity. I'm Joanne Hanson. Thanks for being here. We have goals by the end of our time together. We are talking about culture, diversity with distance learning, and what can we do from there? So first we'll go over culture, which is about building relationships, being genuine, vulnerable, finding humor, along with focusing on our priorities. These are three kinds of priorities that may also be some of your priorities. There will be examples on how we may empower others within distance learning and if it's not a distance learning. Second, we'll go over diversity. And what does it mean? We will go over students with different needs, examples of integrating practices, and how we can embrace different cultures as well. Finally, professional development and other resources we can look out for. But first, welcome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Please take the time to feel amazing about yourself, even if for a moment, because you're here, you're watching, you're looking at different conferences, different webinars to see what else you can integrate into your organization, into your school, your district. You're obviously reflective. You're modeling what it is to be a lifelong learner, and you took the time to see what you may learn to integrate into your community. This means you're a leader that is likely very busy, values his or her work, and is not reminded enough about how you make a difference and it's worth your time. You know it's worth your time, and that's why you're here. But we thank you, all of us, in every school, because we work together and we create synergy together. I'm Joanne Hanson. I'm a 6-year principal in El Centro Elementary School District. At El Centro, it's my second year as a principal. We are in the southern area of California in what's considered Region 18 for ACSA, Imperial County, which is on the way to Yuma from San Diego. I'm an advocate for learning social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices, autism in the general classroom or autism in general, crisis prevention intervention, inclusive practices, etc., which all come back to relationships, celebrating diversity, and creating a positive culture that we integrate into the fabric of our daily life at work. I've been integrating elements of relationships since I started. I was a top finalist for the Duncan Webb Award in San Bernardino for teaching character, and continuously have been implementing it into schools with staff, student, and parent feedback with data for the past 8 years. I'm glad to see a trend of advocacy for social emotional learning. I taught in 3rd through 8th grade in various districts in California, from San Bernardino, a really large school district, to a small one school district with farms surrounding the school. I worked at a school with a varied amount of ethnicities, and I've also worked at a school where it was 95% Hispanic, about 86% English learners, and about 90% socioeconomically disadvantaged. Yet I also grew up in an area with very few English learners, and more than once did I see my parent be discriminated against for being someone who came from Mexico, who had an accent. So I've seen a different side as well. I'm a single mom. I have a 13-year-old who challenged me with signs of autism and having ADHD. I have a daughter with a shunt, and she's receiving services with a specific learning disability for showing dyslexia in first grade and other health impairment. These stats are relevant to us. When we hear about what someone recommends, we wonder, where have you worked? Do you understand some of my struggles? Can you relate at all? I hope you feel that I can. I love this work, so let me tell you in advance that if you reach out to me, I will reach back. You have a question, I will respond quickly with resources. I believe in synergy. I believe I can learn from you, and also that all of us have something to offer. A lot of times we're more capable than we ourselves realize. So if you're watching, I'm hoping to one day watch a webinar from you. So the topic was building a school culture within distance learning that values diversity. There are things that we can do when it's not distance learning and things that we can integrate even in distance learning. When we talk about culture, though, what are we talking about? The culture includes our relationships, how we respect and how we respond to one another. If we have a safe environment for learning, we can't promote a value without modeling it and without creating a safe environment. So how do we do this? First, regularly, and then also in distance learning. The best way I can describe it is to be genuine, vulnerable, and very clear in our priorities. So for culture, it's about being genuine, knowing our priorities, being clear with them, and at times showing our vulnerability. There's a video that I made. Actually, there's a lot of different videos that I made during my first year as principal and years afterwards. And during that first year, I was making these videos, and I was also meeting with my union reps every month at Starbucks after school, and we'd go over ideas I had, over some initiatives that were going on to see what they thought, and also if there was anything that they wanted to make me aware of. We can do this during distance learning as well. We can still meet with our union reps via Zoom and have coffee together. And when school's back, you can still meet in person if you're able to do that. I asked these reps at the end of the year to view some of my different reflection videos and to help me choose the one I was going to show the staff at the end of the year. I'm going to show you that video. The past week and 2 days has been something that I don't think I'll ever forget. I don't think that a lot of the teachers will forget it, or the staff, or the students, or the parents. It's really hard to have these reflections because there's so much that you can't say that is on your mind. There's so much. I mean, overall, it's just what happens is if you've been a teacher before you're a principal, you have access to your memories of what you remember that was difficult. You have access, if you try, to the memories of how it felt when you were asked to do this, to do that. The parents, the students, the discipline issues. Meanwhile, the curriculum, changing curriculum, new initiatives, new strategies. And it's always changing. It always seems like you're adding more to the plate. The difference between that and a principal is that the only people that have the access to what a principal goes through are principals. And so what's hard is that people, I think at my school, do a great job of trying to think of my shoes, trying to think of what it's like in my shoes. I think they do an excellent job of trying to think about those things, and they're considerate of that. And that's just rare, I think. Overall, though, in most settings, I don't think most staff members would realize the different kinds of things that you go through. So what happens sometimes is you feel a little lonely because there's not a lot of people that know what you're going through. And you can't divulge everything you're going through. Your spouses normally are not in the same field as you, so they can't understand. So it's just sometimes it's a really lonely position. You don't have a lot of colleagues. So here are some questions. Why did I wait until the end of the year? Why did I give the teachers an evaluation tool and survey about me before I showed the video? Why did I include my reps in the decision? Would their input of the staff had been the same on my evaluation? Or even, for instance, have the staff with the rep input on my videos, would it have been as genuine if I hadn't been meeting with them monthly? Take the time, if you'd like, to please stop and think about that. You can pause the video and try to answer those questions. Why did I wait till the end of the year to show that video? Why did I make sure that I gave them the evaluation tool before I showed the video? Would it have been the same to have the reps help me if I hadn't been meeting with them monthly? And why did I even have them involved with that decision? In this process, I showed vulnerability. I showed I'm human. And I'm willing to put myself out there. It may hopefully provoke others to do the same. During the rest of summer after that meeting with my reflection video, staff is going to remember. They may remember when they tried to understand what's going on. They were able to be honest with their feedback tool about me before the video. So they know that I didn't show the video to alter a survey so that in any way maybe would get more positive feedback on something that they otherwise maybe would have mentioned if they hadn't seen the video. The point of the video was not that, and I wanted to make sure they knew. I also wanted my union reps to see more about who I am. They were able to see more than one video. Then I wanted them to feel valued because they are valued. It's genuine. They are valued. And they're choosing something so important and personal and vulnerable. And finally, they can give me input on what they really think is better to show from a perspective that I don't have the same as I once did. Being genuine also may mean laughing at oneself at times. So for instance, in distance learning, there was one newsletter that I sent out. And again, this could be during the regular time or during distance learning. But during distance learning, we know that there's a lot of staff members that mention that they have so many emails. And so it almost seems like it's more time consuming to be reading our newsletters at times for them. There was a newsletter that there was a piece of a sentence, and I don't know how it happened, but in the piece of the sentence, it was put randomly all over my newsletter. My secretary noticed, she started laughing about it, and I saw an opportunity. I thought, So I wrote an email to all the staff and I said, hey, the secretary noticed that this part of a sentence is randomly throughout the newsletter. Let's have a competition and scavenger hunt and see how many times it's in the newsletter and who can count accurately how many times it's in the newsletter. Some people responded and they laughed about that it sounded funny, or I think it was 5 times or 6 times. So they were able to see that we can talk about this. It's not a common situation that I have this kind of error all over a newsletter. That wouldn't be good. But when it did happen, it's okay for us to laugh about it. And it shows a little vulnerability there. In addition to that, it seemed like more people might even read the newsletter more quickly than before because it adds a fun element to it. There's opportunities sometimes within regular learning or distance learning to build that culture.
come back. Come back who?
I'll come back tomorrow. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
40.
40 who? For the last time, open the door. It's the curtain. Oh.
We want to model and integrate those priorities. So we always talk about this. We say our vision or our priorities, our goals. We want to know what are these priorities we have and make all our decisions from it. So for this culture, we are being genuine, vulnerable, and we have our priorities and we make decisions from our priorities to be genuine. But it all works differently for each person. You are different from me. I'm different from him or from her. Whatever we do to work through these examples, it will be unique to who we are. Although one strategy or one way of showing appreciation, for instance, or the way that we have our certain priorities may be a little different, we also want to make sure that it matches the way that we naturally can be as much as possible, as much as possible. So that part of you that you have that's special when you're showing those priorities, that's the part that you want to shine. If I value initiative, for instance, I must hold back from micromanaging, for it will hinder initiative. This is one quote from Barack Obama regarding what he says. He says, "The best way to not feel hopeless is to get up and do something. Don't wait for good things to happen to you. If you go out and make some good things happen, you will fill the world with hope. You will fill yourself with hope." Now, this is regarding taking initiative. It's hard sometimes. That's the point. It's challenging. If I value positivity, I must be bold and stand up at times if I see negativity and work to focus on being positive. And if I'm not as positive as I think I should have been, I'm going to point it out. I wish I can say I'm always smiling, that I'm always in a happy mood, but I can't say that because there are times when I haven't had my coffee in the morning. Yes, I'm one of those people that have coffee in the morning. And if I haven't had my coffee that morning and I'm already being asked questions that make my brain work really hard, it's hard for me to be smiling as much than if I already had my coffee. I know that there are people that notice it, the people that are around me the most. But that is what I need to always push myself to be because I value it. And if I see negativity, it's imperative that I also make a point to point that out in a positive way as much as possible. Positivity can be addressed in the time of distance learning as well, and during challenging times. We've gone through many challenging times, so distance learning is an example of it. One that really resonates with us these days is this quote: "If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it." This is especially relevant during this time because there's certain things that are within our control and there's certain things that are not. If I value empowerment, I must give power to others to promote their decisions and help them see their self-worth and their value. Push people beyond what they think their future career is to another possibility that perhaps they haven't considered yet. Also, we at times are mentoring future administrators. One of the main things that I have been doing that I'm sure that many of you have done is trying to promote the experience of future administrators, of aspiring administrators, to experience empowering others. So for instance, when I have a mentee administrator, I make sure I invite them to awards assemblies, to recognition events where we are honoring other staff members, teachers, administrators. So they experience that their role there is basically to empower and support another person. When we discuss empowering one another, these are possible quotes we can read as well. For instance, we have one from Ricky Martin, and we also have one from Quero Apache Prayer. First one is, every day begins like a blank chalkboard on which each of us can write the poem of our present and our dreams for the future. The next quote is, looking behind, I am filled with gratitude. Looking forward, I am filled with vision. Looking upwards, I am filled with strength. Looking within, I discover peace. When, for instance, during distance learning, we were going to either, if we do it through Zoom, or even if we happen to be socially distancing, which we did with our custodians and pupil supervisors, when we had an event where we were honoring them, I made sure I invited someone who is an aspiring administrator so that they can see that, they could experience that. Empowering others is valuing them and going above and beyond to find unique ways to make them feel special. There are a lot of national days, but we don't always mention those national days. So for instance, when there was National Custodians Day, National Teachers Day, the custodians, for instance, were on site, so we were able to honor them at the site. Our pupil supervisors were also there. So we decided, let's have an annual Pupil Supervisor Appreciation Day. It didn't have to be on the calendar, but they are working at the school site every day along with our custodians. And then I talked to an assembly member, and the assembly member was happy to give them California Assembly certificates for the work that they do. That is special and different. It's unique. When it was Teachers' Day at the end of the school year last year, when we were in distance learning, a teacher had an idea to have lawn signs brought to all the staff members. It's empowering because I moved forward with that idea. And then I made sure that I delivered it so that I'm not giving out private information. And I put them in front of the houses. And I made sure to always give credit that it was her idea, that she went out looking for these signs. So she's empowered, and it's a unique way to make teachers feel special. And I'm sure you have your own ideas on the things that you have done. For World Teachers' Day in the fall, sometimes it may be something like the lawn sign. It could be food that I know some people have had it where a business has food available for teachers when they show up, or staff members if you're celebrating staff as well. And also this year, what I did was I wrote a thoughtful card to each staff member that was unique to each staff member. So that was also giving from the heart, really knowing the person and taking the time to write to them and send it out to them. So it's finding those unique ways that we can make people realize how much we value them, and we also empower them with their ideas and feeling appreciated. One way to help other people also feel empowered, to help the culture of the school, is continuing with that recognition. With ACSA, there are opportunities, for instance, to empower other administrators We can think how many people in our district are nominating other administrators. And if there are Teacher of the Year awards, are we making sure that we put in all of our effort to nominate that person? Really take the time to give them the most chance, the highest chance they have to win that. There was a teacher that won 4 ACSA Teacher of the Year awards within our charter. She was able to apply to be Teacher of the Year for our county. When she received the application, I told her, and I was in the middle of a lot of work, that I told her, if you want to send this to me, I'm happy to also look at it and help you out. So she did. She sent it to me. I would give her feedback and so forth. She won for Imperial County Teacher of the Year. And what this does for the school is it gives it more pride. It gives your district more pride because it's all how we frame it in addition to empowering that one person. So for instance, we have posters that say, or banners that say, your child belongs to a school with the Teacher of the Year. And we also say, this represents the caliber of the teaching staff that you have. It's also how it's phrased, that it shows that she's representing the school, not just herself. If there is, for instance, the Cinta Custodian of the Year, we want to make sure we do everything we can to have that person win. And speaking of continuing on to the state level, that teacher, the longest application, felt so strong about herself, so strongly. She was proud of herself, and she reached out to more people to support her. She did the long application for the California Teacher of the Year process, and she was one of the top 46 out of more than 200,000 applicants, which means she was in the top 0.02%. That means something to the school. So all of those situations, and if someone brings up another recognition that they have, we want to make sure that we promote that, we celebrate it, and that they feel special. So those are some ways that we can create this culture and empower others, especially if that's one of your priorities. So we've talked a lot about building a school culture and with distance learning. Now let's talk about diversity. When we talk about diversity, then again, what are we talking about with diversity? We're talking about students with different needs and different backgrounds. First, we can talk about students that are in special education. That have a disability. First, you can start with, for instance, having clubs or having a group such as Circle of Friends, which is all about inclusionary practices where you become friends with one another, whether you are in general ed or you have an IEP, but that you're all joined together. So when there wasn't distance learning, the students would be able to meet during their lunchtime every week, and they would have activities. In addition to that, they would also learn about different kinds of disabilities. Then during distance learning, we continued that. We made sure that during their lunchtime, we could meet on Zoom, and they have different activities as well, such as, for instance, a scavenger hunt. We have our librarian tech who was able to make this activity where she would tell the students, find something red in your house. And so then they would try to show something red. And then that was part of the scavenger hunt. Now, here's the little twist that makes it a little different. So we have our circle of friends. Okay, great. We have a student council. Okay, great. But here's the twist. To be part of student council, you have to be part of Circle of Friends. Circle of Friends is a big commitment. Student council is a big commitment. But if you're going to be a leader in the school, we want to make it very clear that you need to embody inclusionary practices and what we believe in as a school. And that is the message. So when we're talking about diversity, it's not just having, for instance, circle of friends. It's finding a way to make it clear that that is a priority. So it's those little unique ways. Also, for instance, when we talk about backgrounds, we have, for instance, in September, we have Hispanic Heritage Month. So instead of, for instance, celebrating one day where we talk about that it's Hispanic Heritage Month, we made it virtually or in distance learning, we made it a whole month where the first day, yes, we talked about the culture, we talked about dances as well, music, and what it meant, what that day meant, Mexican Independence Day, for instance. But then we also had another event, for instance, where we dressed up as a famous Hispanic. And when we dressed up, such as staff members that dressed up, and we had an assembly in the morning before instructional time, we were each able to talk about the person we dressed up as and why we dressed up as that person. So it wasn't just about certain colors or certain dances and music. It was something beyond that. It was really recognizing the culture and celebrating it. And we had another day where we were talking about famous quotes from famous Hispanics. And so we made sure we were reaching deeper into the month. We have Native American Heritage Month coming up. What we're planning to do is we reached out to a local district that actually has students that are Native American. If we have the ability to reach out to students that are of that background, even better. And we're looking to see what else we can do during the month with other things that come up that we can blend it together. For instance, during Hispanic Heritage Month, we also had Higher Ed Week. During Higher Ed Week, we had some presenters, and if the presenters during an assembly again in the morning before instructional time, that was recorded and then put on Facebook as well. With those people that came, those presenters, if they were Hispanic, they also mentioned how they were Hispanic while they were talking about their career. And we had Assembly Member Eduardo Garcia present to students as well, who is from our area. So it was somebody local that was of that background and was talking about higher education during Hispanic Heritage Month. In February, for instance, we're going to have Black History Month. Last year, instead of having one day where we talk about one theme, we wanted to make it more about the history. We wanted a history competition. We reached out to San Bernardino because they have an extensive, wonderful Black history competition that students could get ready for and prepare during the entire school year. So we reached out, we had their information, we made sure that the district was supporting what we were going to do. And we ended up having one class where they presented different poems and quotes from famous Black Americans. We also had a board member come and he presented. And they also talked about the history of our school. They talked about in the past and history with past segregation and what things meant and how it was for different people. And we had a lot of parents afterwards come and tell us that they were wanting to help in the future if we had something else. So we want to make it more extensive, just like this year we did more for Hispanic Heritage Month, or we had different events. We want to do the same thing for Black History Month. And if we did it for women, appreciating women, or when we go to autism awareness, when we talk about that it's not just one day, that it is something that's ongoing. So eventually when we have our Veterans Day Assembly, when we talk about 9/11 and we remember, when we have Memorial Day, when we talk about all events, that it becomes a common practice to celebrate all kinds of backgrounds within each of those kinds of events. And it becomes part of our culture to learn about other cultures and diversity from students that may have different needs, different abilities and disabilities, along with different backgrounds and cultures, which helps us with opinions. Please take the time to look at this graphic. When we talk about diversity, these are all the different things we can be considering. And there is likely one in here, if not more, that include a group that is difficult for some to accept or celebrate. Whether someone has a child, whether they're single or married or divorced, their age, how tall they are, if they wear glasses or contacts. If you skip to the last one, for instance, if they're older, so it can also be about their older age. It could be if they're female or male, if they have certain kinds of degrees, if they're homosexual, if they also use a wheelchair or have some kind of physical disability. Have they made decisions before that landed them within the legal system? Who do they pray to? Do they have an accent? What kind of accent? If they're male, even if they have certain color eyes, if they like doing certain activities, if they like a different football team, if they vote for a different political party, if they speak a certain language. And from each of these, we can even think about more. It also has, for instance, if they're vegetarian, if they're vegan, or they eat certain things, or it could be that they eat meat. Each one of these has more extensions. Because, for instance, even when we talk about, for instance, if they have a degree, it could be different kinds of degrees. When we talk about their orientation, it can mean so many different things, or their identification. When we talk about if it's what they eat, we can talk about so many different things. There's something on this chart that is difficult for some to accept. And this doesn't even bring up our backgrounds, our culture. If they celebrate their culture, it makes some people perhaps uncomfortable. So all of these things are included in what we talk about when we talk about diversity. And speaking of that, when we talk about opinions and celebrating one another, with all of this and inclusionary practices, it really, a lot of times, does come back to social emotional learning. There have been studies where social emotional learning is able to overcome biases that people have. So there's a lot of professional development that is available that can help support this kind of mentality. And it doesn't have to be expensive either. I know I've been talking for a while. What's really great with these presentations is that I don't need to pause and have you take a break. You're welcome to pause the video and take your break. But really quickly, I want you to please think about all these things we've been talking about, and please pause the video and jot down something that has been mentioned that resonated with you, and maybe something that it reminded you of something that you did. A lot of times we do things that are absolutely wonderful, but we don't take the time to write them down. So please, if you don't mind jotting down, you can pause or keep listening, something that resonated with you, that you liked, that you want to keep in mind, or something that it made you remember or realize that you do as a common practice. I don't know if you realized, but during this entire video, I've been trying to smile with you. And it would be better if we were in person because you know that I'm doing it live with you. I'm trying to imagine you right there with me, because if I'm smiling at you and I'm trying to be a little animated, even though I can't be as animated as I would be with students, for instance, that's what we want to do, even if it's in distance learning. in distance learning, we still want to make sure that we try our best to be genuine so that it is able to be seen through video. As far as different kinds of professional development, there are a lot of various ones. I know right now with recent movements, there may be more interest in certain kinds. And so I'm going to mention a few that you may be interested in. First, there is TREP. You look that up, TREP. There is a training where you obtain a certificate on trauma-informed practices. So there's that's available, and it takes time to go through all the lessons. There also is, for instance, conscious discipline. If you just go to conscious discipline, look that up all together. On conscious discipline, you can see all the background, all the awards it's received, the research behind it. It helps people understand integrating social emotional learning, really understanding it, the brain research behind it. And it's about integrating whenever situations occur. It's not one training where you learn and then that's the end. It's continuously looking back. They also have resources of COVID in English and in Spanish for staff and for parents. They have books to learn from and books to use with students. They have podcasts, and they have access to the learning of certain videos. There's also Cora Learning. Cora Learning was free. And with Cora Learning, there is one module that you can sign up for, and it's called Black Minds Matter. You do need to order a book, and they have various articles with different web series that they show. They have webinars that you can view. You can obtain a certificate as well. It's a lot of learning so that we can understand one another, and we can also value, appreciate, celebrate diversity, and be very aware of how we can perceive things, history behind things, statistics behind things, so that we are aware and consider those things with the decisions that we make. There's that. And with a lot of training, for instance, autism in the general classroom and so forth, there's IRIS, IRIS. And in IRIS, they have a lot of different trainings, but they also have, for instance, autism in the general classroom to understand students. And in all these situations, if you always reach out to your local SELPA, they are very happy most of the time. I've only seen that side. I'm just assuming maybe they haven't had their coffee one day, but they are always willing to be helpful and come do training for staff. What's great about this time is that you don't have to necessarily worry as much about substitutes all the time and paying for substitutes during a training. So you can have this available. There are, for instance, pupil supervisors that may have their hours that could be used for some of this training. And there's a lot of conferences and trainings that, since it's done online, it costs less money. So those are just some ideas. The only way for us to truly work on these things about ourselves is to be reflective, to accept the truth that there may be some difficulties and challenges for each one of us, and then continuously learn. There are resources, luckily, for us to continue our learning. Please email me and I'll be so happy to share with you. I hope that you enjoyed something from what I said. I hope you feel special and proud of yourself that you came to this session, yet you perhaps have an idea and feel motivated to integrate things that you already thought of and perhaps now have even more ideas. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoyed.